All right, good morning, class, and welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about simplifying rationals. So we've talked throughout the year about functions, and we've been working recently on factoring. And everything we've been doing recently is going to lead up to the next few weeks where we talk about rational expressions. And we're going to spend some time over the next few weeks talking about these. The lessons will ramp up in difficulty level, so make sure you start, make sure you're going in order. These lessons will use Delta Math. For those of you that are familiar with that, great. If for some reason you have forgotten your username or password, let me know. Shoot me an email, and I will get back to you with that information. So please get in touch. If for some reason you have yet to create an account, there is a YouTube video up that'll tell you how to create an account on Delta Math. Remember, we're still working. We're still going towards the end of the week. For those of you that are asking about next week with the Memorial Day holiday, for the Memorial Day holiday, lessons next week will go up on Tuesday the 26th and Thursday the 28th. They will be smaller lessons to account for the 4-day week instead of the 5-day week. But this will be a normal week, so we'll have a lesson going out on Monday and on Wednesday. All right, so let's look at the kind of questions we might see when we talk about rationals. So it says simplify the expression completely if possible. And we have x squared minus 16, okay, on top. And on the bottom, we have x squared plus 4x. Okay, so to simplify, what we're going to be doing is we're going to first worry about the top, then we'll worry about the bottom. So you're almost ignoring the x squared plus 4x right now. We're going to look at just x squared minus 16. The question you want to ask yourself is, how do I factor x squared minus 16? And if you remember from the last week of lessons, x squared minus 16 is using the difference of two squares method. So with the difference of two squares method, we're going to be looking at two perfect squares, x squared and 16. There's also has to be that difference, that subtraction sign in between. So this is actually going to factor to x minus 4, x plus 4. Okay, totally ignore the top now. Now we're just going to look at the bottom. All we want to concern ourselves with is x squared plus 4x, and we have to figure out what kind of factoring could this be? Now, we look at this and we say, well, two terms, there's a plus sign in between, so it can't be difference of two squares. What could it be? Well, they both have an x in common. Maybe it's GCF, and it is, in fact, GCF here. So we're going to take the greatest common factor, which is x, and what we're going to be left with is an x plus 4. Now, what you'll notice is everything here is equivalent. The top is equivalent. I just factored it. The bottom is equivalent. I just factored it. If I were to do the multiplication, I would end up with the original problem. What's awesome about simplifying rationals here is now I get to look and say, now that I've factored the top, now that I've factored the bottom, is there anything that appears on both the top and the bottom? And in this case, the x plus 4 appears on the top and on the bottom, so I can cross those out. I have to cross out basically a term, meaning I can't cross this x and this x out, the x on the bottom and the x from the x minus 4. The x minus 4 is itself a term, whereas the x plus 4, that whole term can cross out with that whole term on the bottom. That leaves me with x minus 4 over x, and that is my final answer. So now let's show you how to input that into Delta Math. Okay, so using parentheses for the top, I'm going to put x minus 4. Now when I hit the division, that's where that fraction comes up, and I just want to have an x. I'm going to submit my answer. Yes, I got it right. Let's see a new problem. Okay, x to the 4th minus 5x to the 3rd. So x to the 4th minus 5x to the 3rd, and on The bottom, we have 6x. Okay, so again, we just look at the top. So just looking at the top, what's going on? I've got an x to the fourth, and I've got a 5x to the third. Even though it's subtraction, 5 is not a perfect square, x to the third is not a perfect square, so I'm going to be stuck with GCF. My GCF here is x to the third, and that's going to leave me with an x minus 5. On the bottom, there's just a 6 and an x, so there isn't even a GCF. It's just going to be left as 6x. All right, so now I have to decide what am I going to factor, what's going to cross out. Well, the x minus 5, there is no x minus 5 on the bottom. Just like there's a 6 on the top, there's no 6 on the bottom. But there's 3 x's here, this x to the third, and there's 1 x on the bottom. So I'm going to cross out the 3 and make it a 2, and I'm going to cross out this x on the bottom completely. Okay, so just an aside, what's basically happening is I have x times x times x, and I have an x on the bottom. And so what's happening is one of these x's is getting crossed out on top and bottom, and that's where the 2 x's is being left, and that's where my x squared is coming from. So what am I left with here? I'm left with x squared, x minus 5 over 6. Okay, so we got x squared, x minus 5, and we've got a 6 on the bottom. And there we go, we got the answer right. Okay, so no matter what happens here, right, you can see with the next problem, you're going to factor the top using x squared minus 64, which is going to be difference of 2 squares. You'll get x minus 8, x plus 8. And for the bottom, you're going to have to factor using the AC method, right? You're going to have to figure out what 2 numbers multiply to 72, what 2 numbers add to 17. You'll be able to factor into 2 sets of parentheses, and then you'll see if any of those sets of parentheses can cross out. All right, so some of them are going to be easier than others, but it'll generate a problem for you each time. I believe I asked you to do just 5 of these problems. If you're struggling with your factoring, that's where you go back to the Delta Math and see if you can figure out any of the factoring assignments that you've missed. All right, so just keep that in mind, okay? So make sure that you are paying close attention to that. All right, I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you on the next one. We are going to continue to work with simplifying rationals, and it will keep progressing. So factoring is not going to go away. So if you are having questions, please ask one of us. We'll be happy to help.